I didn't choose the river. The river chose me. That's what I used to tell my late wife, Susan, whenever she asked why I stayed put in that quiet corner of nowhere after 25 years of deployments and foreign bases. To her, it was just a muddy bend snaking past forgotten cornfields. To me, it was stillness, a rare kind I'd earned. When I retired from the Army Corps of Engineers in my 50s, I didn't want a golf course or a gated community. I wanted land I could work with my hands. 13 acres along the Sycamore River, half fertile farmland, half tangled marsh and groves. And I built my life there. Corn, irrigation, a solar shed, a footbridge my granddaughter painted bright blue, Susan's Bridge. It grounded me, gave me rhythm, and never once asked for anything in return. For years, neighbors kept to themselves. A few homes, newer builds with HOA types, far enough away to coexist peacefully. I kept my taxes paid, my fields tidy, and my nose out of their meetings. That was the arrangement until they expanded. Lakeside villas, they called it, a cul-de-sac with manicured lawns and solar garden gnomes, right up to my property line. That's when Karen Jennings appeared, blonde, crisp, smile like she already owned my time. She parked her Tesla, looked at my old truck, and asked, "Are you the farmer?" I said, "I own this land, if that's what you mean." She blinked. "We're organizing a community initiative to beautify the waterfront. Perhaps you'd consider donating part of your parcel." I laughed. She didn't. I said no. The river wasn't for sale. It never would be. Karen didn't let it go. Soon, River Commons signs appeared, volunteers with shovels and survey stakes, and I noticed the changes creeping toward my land. I warned them first, politely, then with documented boundary markers. Meanwhile, my corn thrived, golden, tall, promising. But tension hung like storm clouds. HOA letters arrived, veiled in legal jargon, runoff zones, drainage management, aquatic enhancement areas. The last thing my river needed was an enhancement. One spring morning, dew on the corn, I heard diesel engines. HOA contractors at the edge of my property, digging a basin, redirecting runoff into my river. Karen, clipboard in hand, chirped, "It's not on your property. Survey shows it's inside HOA lines. Permits? You'll get copies." Eventually, the river changed that day, soggy soil, backed up irrigation, silt creeping in. I feared for what would come. Karen became HOA president. The previous leader stepped down, worn out by passive-aggressive notes about lawn height and paint colors. Karen, of course, saw destiny in that vacancy. She dazzled the neighbors, wine tastings, scones, fancy landscaping, while quietly plotting Lake Serenity, a full-scale artificial lake reaching into my riparian buffer zone. I went to the next HOA meeting. They tried to bar me. I reminded them I lived adjacent, and their fake lake was already affecting my crops. They let me in barely. Karen clicked through slides, environmental buzzwords dancing on the screen, a community amphitheater facing Susan's Bridge. When I asked about permits and hydrology studies, she smiled, flinched not, and reminded me, "You're not a voting member. Your concerns don't influence the board." Yeah, that happened. Weeks later, I filed complaints, contacted state agencies, FEMA, everyone who might care. The corn rotted. Their lawyers sent stiff letters accusing me of drone surveillance and trespass. They underestimated me. Logistics, compliance, military discipline, it all came together. I built a case like preparing for deployment, every violation, every inch documented. Then came Marisol Pena from the state. State investigators and forensic engineers confirmed everything: illegal permits, structural failure, diverted runoff. Karen Jennings vanished quietly. The HOA scrambled, their PR spin meaningless. I had evidence, witnesses, satellite images. Sofia Rios, a fierce environmental litigator, took the case. We filed civil suits: negligent construction, water diversion, destruction of crops, forged documents, emotional distress. The board offered a settlement. I refused. My land wasn't for sale. My silence wasn't for sale. The trial was intense. Expert witnesses, hydrology reports, emails showing Karen's deliberate deception. Judge Mercer didn't blink. Evidence undeniable. Compensatory and punitive damages awarded. The message clear: you cannot tamper with land, water. But as restoration, Leonard and I watched the river flow, calm, patient, relentless, the same as it had always been. We learned, finally, that you don't own the land. You belong to it. You walk with it. And if you're lucky, when the storms come, it still welcomes you the next day. The river never forgets. Neither do I. And if someone tries to overwrite the rules of nature with a clipboard, they'll learn. Sometimes it floods, sometimes it carves, but always it returns. Now tell me, what would you have done in my boots? Would you have let them take your river? Or fought back like I did? Share your thoughts below, because someone has to speak for the land. Yeah, so after all that, I thought maybe, finally, things would settle. The river would run. The trial, I started noticing subtle signs, survey stakes appearing near the river, an unfamiliar landscaping crew trimming trees along what I'd marked as protected buffer zones. I called Sophia. Immediately. She reminded me, legal victories matter, but enforcement is a whole other battlefield. Keep documenting, she said. They're testing the waters, literally. So I did. Every stake, every dig, every trespass, I recorded it. I started timing the flow of water after every heavy rain, measuring the impact on my ditches, my crops. It became a rhythm, almost meditative, tracking how the land reacted to interference. And it wasn't just me. Neighbors who had once ignored my warnings were starting to knock on my door, asking for advice, for help. They'd watched the storm, the collapse, and realized how close we'd all been to losing more than just corn. One morning, Leonard and I were walking along the riverbank, and he said, "Roar, you know this isn't just about your land anymore." I nodded. He had a point. That flood had exposed a systemic arrogance. HOAs acting like kingdoms, assuming that rules didn't apply to them, that rivers and soil were just records, emails, invoices, even a recording of Karen discussing creative ways to bypass wetlands regulations. That little nugget? It spread like wildfire. Suddenly, neighbors who'd once toasted. But the scars of that flood, the memory of water surging, of soil giving way, weren't going anywhere. And the HOA? They were shaken, sure, but some of the same attitudes lingered. The lesson wasn't just legal, it was cultural. You can't bend the land, the law, and the truth without consequences. By late spring, the river had returned to its gentle pace, the fields were green again, and the new growth was tentative but persistent. I stood on the bridge one morning, my granddaughter by my side, and I realized something profound. This fight wasn't just about me, or my corn, or even Lake Serenity. It was about respect for the land, for laws, for people who refused to be ignored. And in that quiet moment, with the mist curling above the water and the soft crunch of her